For me, especially coming from the touch and pen background, where those were each new, exciting ways to interact with your PC. And so for us, AI is just another even newer, more exciting way to interact with your PC. And so we're just really trying hard to, circle and brainstorm and zero in on what is the most compelling user scenario for how to have AI help you interact with your PC. There's definitely still a lot of questions and searching for what is the right product market fit. And so we're just really trying to figure out what is the right way to get that into users' hands in a way that they actually want.
Welcome to the Forward Slash, where we lean into the future of IT. I'm your host, Aaron Chesney, with my beautiful co-host, James Carmen. Today we have with us Nat Pollock, who is a principal software engineer on the Windows AI team at Microsoft. He's a career Microsoft employee, which includes 3 internships, all beginning in 2009. He's worked on several projects over the years, including content services, touchpad inking, and animations, and most recently, AI. He also has worked on something called paper airplanes, which to me sounds more like a hobby than a profession. Nat lives in Seattle with his wife, daughter, and dog, and they have a new daughter on the way. Welcome to the podcast, Nat, and congratulations on your expanding family.
Thank you.
But before we get started, I have an aside for you. My computer is always running cold. Do you think it's because I always have my windows open?
It's always running cold?
That's such a bad joke. My window's open. Wow.
I almost got him to try and solve the problem.
You did. I started brainstorming right there.
You don't get that a lot, do you? I'm sure with like family and like it's bad enough for us software developers. Hey, can you fix my printer? But you work like for the company who makes the operating system. Like that's probably terrible.
I get it all the time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it must be just unbearable. So today we wanted to talk about how, speaking of software development, how software development is the same or different at Microsoft as compared to, smaller companies that aren't like flagship companies.
Yeah, I mean, since I've only been at Microsoft, I kind of only know the details of how it's done internally, but I can kind of think about the things that I think are probably different. Like one would be like we just have so much code and so much old code, and so there's so many people working on one thing that all needs to come together in the end. So there's this big system of, we call them branches, but basically individual builds of Windows that each team has to, like each team would own their own little build, and we make our changes and build it, make sure it works, and then those merge up another level when the managers decide it's ready. And there's anywhere from 4 to 7 levels of those all coming together in the end.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, so like their Windows 1 came out in 1985. So you're talking about, what is that, 40 years now? Just about?
Yeah.
Of software. I can't imagine having a code base that old and still trying to make things work. Now, I'm sure a lot of that has been replaced over the years. Like the old 8-character name limit. I was so happy to see that one go.
Wait, that's gone now? I can stop doing that?
Yeah, you can use spaces too.
Oh, thank goodness.
However, don't try and rename something with just a capitalization change.
Oh yeah, that'll confuse Git too.
Yeah. There's a few systems out there that still have an issue. It's like, well, I changed the capitalization on it. It's a different file. No, it's not.
Well, what's it like? So you mentioned like you guys have your own builds of the different like teams within the Windows, broader Windows team. You all have your own kind of build. Do you like have a physical device that you run the build on? Is it virtual machines? Like what, as you're tinkering around, how do you kick the tires on these things?
No, so there's a whole system. There's a whole team that their only job is to make sure all these build servers are running and like there's no errors with the builds. They set up like the schedule for the builds. The way it typically works is there's one build every night for each branch. So like my team, our build comes out in the morning, anywhere from 9 to noon. And And so like if you had a bunch of changes you really want to test so when you're developing your changes, you're obviously applying them and testing them before you check them in. But you always want to make sure that things work in the actual build. There's a whole, that's one of the cool things about working out of big companies. We have a whole team managing this whole server farm basically, to make sure everything's running.
But the build drops, like say in the morning, right? And you get a new build of Windows. How do you make that come to life? Is that you're all your testing on virtual machines, or do you physically put it on a box somewhere, or is that done? Like how do you do that?
It's super variable depending on what you're working on. Even when I worked on touch, you can't really use a virtual machine to test the performance of touch, right? So we would be applying those to our physical devices. I have like probably 7 Surface devices here now that I've tested over the years. And so I would, like, if I had something new, I probably wouldn't update every morning. Some people would update every morning, but I found it to be a little bit too time consuming. But yeah, when I think there would be enough changes or something I need to test, I would go through the upgrade process. We've got it pretty streamlined. There's scripts, and you type a few things, you wait an hour, and you have a new Windows build installed on your device. But now lately, when I've been doing some of the UX for the Recall app, that was quicker to do on a VM because you could just like run a VM in the background, have it ready while you're working, and those didn't need any extreme performance. Like some of the stuff we were doing needed performance testing, but stuff that just like I'm moving a button around here, that kind of stuff, those are really easy to do on a VM. So it's just, yeah, it really depends on what you're doing. We've gotten into a lot of internal debates about what is the right way, and we kind of realized there is no one right way.
So for those playing along at home, a VM is a virtual machine, which is basically a computer inside a computer.
Yep.
Basically which is the premise of how cloud works, isn't it? It's just instead of having large, server farms where you have thousands of computers actually running, you have a fewer big computers that are segmented up into virtual machines. At least that's my understanding of the cloud.
Yeah.
That's what I think of when I think of the cloud. So that's really interesting. You mentioned something in that answer called recall. What is this recall thing?
Yeah, so I don't know, the official name is Recall for Windows or Windows Recall. You may have seen some bad news about it or some good news depending on what you read, but the gist of it is it's a way to help you remember everything you've done and get back to everything you've done on your machine, on your Windows machine. So in the background, it's capturing what you're doing, running a bunch of AI models on them, and then you can open the Recall app and you can search, be like, hey, what was the meeting I was doing with Aaron and James? And like it would show you that meeting. You could click on the link and get right back into it. So I initially worked on that. I did a bunch of the early brainstorming, prototyping, played with a few of the AI pipelines, and then as we got closer to shipping, I owned the UX for the timeline. So I didn't mention that, but when you launch the Recall app at the top, there's a timeline, and I'm doing my hand motions. You guys can't see those. At the top, you can see the timeline. You can click on the timeline, and then you can drag back through all the history of the things you've done on your machine.
So that sounds very Big Brothery,
Yep.
in kind of scary. Like I can say it's like I knew it. They're watching us all the time. So how do you make sure that the users that are using Recall that their information isn't leaking out to the government or the secret societies that they're worried about storming their properties?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. That was the basis of a lot of the critical feedback we got when we first announced in April or whenever that was. And so we did a ton of work, like some of the craziest amount of work in a short amount of time I've seen in my career at Microsoft over the past, was that six-ish months or so, to really secure it. So the gist of what we do is there's this technology in Windows called an enclave, and it's similar to a VM. It's basically a really, really pared down VM. So it's running on the machine. Everything inside that VM is encrypted. It's locked down. And so all of the information that we collect from your machine is stored in that enclave. And the only way to get that information out is by going through a Windows hello prompt. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Windows Hello, but it's the authentication method that was introduced somewhat recently. I don't know the history of it, but it's required to have a special TPM chip, security chip on your device. And the Windows Hello, it can either do face authentication. I think they have fingerprint authentication option. But you're required to have one of those two. So it's proof of presence. So your data can only ever be unlocked and read out of this special enclave if you're physically there, in theory. And there's some other protections, like the data locks automatically after 15 minutes. So you can't like have someone come back later and try to hack into your data. Even if you had a hacker somehow plant something on your device, they can't access that data for longer than 15 minutes unless you like continuously log in with your face. And we even added some stuff which might be interesting to talk about more, that because I was involved in that, to make sure that a hacker can't like just take everything all at once. You can only make query to the database every so often. So that's a gist of some of the protections. Because yeah, it's definitely very scary to think about. So we did a ton of work to try to mitigate that.
What's it like from your perspective? I know you're probably proud of the work you do daily there at Microsoft, and you're working on really cool stuff. And then you see that in the press, and it's like they're trying to steal my data and steal my information. And you're like, no, I'm not. I'm just doing really cool stuff. Like, how does that feel? What is that perspective like? That's a unique perspective.
Yeah, no, I think we kind of I see both sides of it. Like I see there's a lot of valid feedback. And then I also understand that it's the press's job to make things exciting and interesting for people to read and maybe blow it out of proportion a little bit. So I can see both sides. And I think we were talking about what's it like to work at Microsoft as a big company. Like that is something that's, I feel, is unique and exciting, but also stressful. Is our user base I was looking at, it's a billion users.
Wow.
If you look at all the Windows users.
That's a lot.
And so that's basically everyone. And so you can't say like, oh, well, this will work for this subset of users, because if you have to you have a responsibility to all of your users.
I imagine like backwards compatibility is a big headache too, since you have to go out to the masses and you have to work on all kinds of different hardware. I imagine that just is all kinds of headaches.
Yeah, there's so many business strategy discussions that I'm not anywhere close to about. Like for this recall product specifically, we decided it would only be on these new devices that have this special NPU AI chip. But yeah, I'm sure there were a million discussions about, is that the right decision? Are we locking out customers that might be able to get it? It's above my pay grade, and I keep trying to understand more about it. It's fun to learn about the business side, but yeah.
So were you in on the discussion when they came up with the idea for this whole recall thing? Like, please tell me it's based on the Black Mirror episode. Did you guys see that one where like your brain is everything you see is being recorded at all times, and like the guy's like getting ready to get on a plane, like, okay, let me thumb through the past few days. Have you done anything wrong or whatever? Like, whoa, okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. Yeah, we're trying to prevent that.
Yeah, that's pretty scary stuff. It's a great episode, though.
What are you talking about? Because I have no idea.
You've never seen Black Mirror? Oh,
no.
Man. It's on Netflix, Black Mirror. So we're not sponsored by Netflix or anything. And they're like, yeah, no kidding.
You know, Joe Rogan.
Yeah. This episode brought to you by. It's I would say it's like the modern day. What was the Twilight Zone kind of a thing, right? But it's more like cool. Tech oriented, and it's pretty interesting. There's some really cool episodes. I don't remember what that one was called, but there was something about.
I think that was the grain, right? It's like a little grain you have in your ear, in your brain.
Yeah.
It just records all your memories, and you can replay them, and it's
cool. Yeah. I'll have to check that one out.
The premise of the whole show is that it's like a dark take on all the new technology, basically, right?
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, there's some great ones, great episodes. You would really like it, Aaron. So.
Yeah, it sounds right up my alley. So speaking of strange things, I have to know, what is this thing in your bio about paper airplanes?
Yeah, so that was when my third internship. I came back right when we were releasing Windows 8. So I don't know if you or your listeners remember, but Windows 8 was the big touch-focused, everything's going to be a touch device. We're replacing the start menu with a giant full-screen touch touch menu. But part of that release was there's a new Windows store for Windows apps, and they wanted every intern that summer was tasked with creating an app to be in the new app store. And the only stipulation was the app had to be somehow related to like the Windows team that you were positioned on. And so that summer I had ended up on the like devices and printing team within Windows. And so our mission was to figure out how do we write a Windows touch app that also needs printing. And so the most fun, really the only thing we could come up with why someone would want to print something anymore was paper airplanes. And so we designed this app where you could scribble, like use touch and pen or whatever you want to draw ink all over a 3D model of a paper airplane. And then we would deconstruct it so that when you printed it out and folded it back up, it would look the way that it did in your 3D model. And so it was a really fun project, like using a lot of touch, doing 3D modeling. It was all in JavaScript for some reason. That was when they were trying to bring a lot of the web developers into the Windows ecosystem. So we made sure that all of our APIs would work for JavaScript. So it wasn't all me. I had another guy who he was really smart. He did a really good job of the like 3D modeling part. I was in charge of all the touch drawing and that kind of stuff. But yeah, we got it done. It worked. I remember one really fun thing was when we had a pitch process to some of the leadership, and when we initially pitched it, one of the higher up leads was like basically said it was impossible or we wouldn't be able to finish it in time, and so it was fun to like prove him wrong.
Oh, I love that.
I wish I could remember who that was, because I could go talk to him now and make fun of him. But
in your face, Bill.
So there's a similarity between the big corporations and the little shops. So there's always that one naysayer that you're like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna prove him wrong. It's like slamming keys, with angst.
Yeah. I don't think it's still out on the App Store. I should look, but I don't even know. We probably didn't get any downloads, but it was a really fun internship.
That's really cool.
It'd be fun to tinker with for sure.
Yeah. We should run a contest. Send us your airplanes. The one that flies the furthest will send you something.
Yeah. So what was it? Like we usually, normal us mere mortal software engineers, we kind of get to stand on the shoulders of giants of the operating system, and all those things are like already built. Like I don't have to think about touch interface really a lot with what I do. But you do, right? Mm-hmm. So what was probably the biggest, like, I don't know, aha moment for you when you're switching from like, okay, somebody's dealing with a mouse to dealing with touching the screen? What was that for you? How did that change your, like, how you view the world?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest difference by far that is like still keeps coming up these days is you can't really get away with any performance lags for touch or inking, because it's when your finger is on the screen, so it's very, very visible if something's lagging behind your finger or lagging behind your pen. Whereas your mouse it's your hand's down here on the table and your mouse is on the screen, so the disconnect isn't as obvious. And so it ends up creating a ton of really interesting and challenging problems. One of the things I worked on was this product called Direct Manipulation Demanip, which was part of the Windows 8 release, and we continued working on it for a long time after that. But the goal of it was anytime you put your finger down and start moving it, we want that to respond on screen immediately with motion and very, very sticky motion to your finger. But for things like in the web, JavaScript can be running and they can do whatever they want with the input, and they might be lagging. And so we need to somehow respond to that input by moving things on the screen in the background while the app or the browser or whatever is processing that input and doing what they want with it. And so it creates a lot of communication challenges, a lot of like synchronization challenges. Sometimes you have to decide, like, you have to create some contracts between the app or the browser and the OS about what motion is allowed, what motion is not allowed, so that the system can start moving before you even responded to the input. Or even things like I put my finger down. What is my finger on top of? What should be moving? It's ideally we wouldn't even have to ask the app because that's too slow. But in some cases, the app is going to tell us, okay, this is the thing that I want to move. You guys can move it while I finish loading the rest of my content, or those kinds of things. So I don't know if you've ever used a touchscreen and you start scrolling and you see like, oh, the content isn't loaded yet. That's because the system is moving the page while the content is slower and loading in the background.
That's really interesting because and that's something that we mere mortals deal with all the time is those dependencies between like the load of the software and doing that, especially since like the invent of the internet, we have always been fighting against load times in trying to manage load times, and it's interesting to hear that even with the finger swiping stuff and all of that, it's still all about how do we manage load times. So that's pretty cool. With you mentioned inking, and I want to circle back to that. I know inking from a comic book reference, like when you're drawing comic book images, you go back through and you have your inking pass, which is where they add the color and the darker lines. What is inking for touch experience?
Yeah, so you could think of it as like pen input, but we call it inking because it's a different paradigm. Like you can use your pen as a stylus where you like just tap with a mouse or double click or drag stuff around. But the more powerful way to use your pen is like by drawing, inking, right? Using handwriting or drawing. And so that is an even more important in terms of performance, because you have an expectation of like when you draw with a pen on paper, like it's immediate. You also have some of that tactile feedback, which we've experimented with adding with pen vibration and those kinds of things. So that's what's meant by inking. It's a different way of interacting with your machine.
Well, you mentioned I have like when you draw on paper, like as soon as I move my pen, there's ink left behind automatically. That's how we're used to. But do you guys find this to be true? Whenever a server at a restaurant gives you a pen, that's never the case. Like that, my pen never works. How is that? Never mind. I don't know. Just something that happened to me last night.
I have my suspicions on that one. I think it's the paper. Because if you think about the mechanism of a ballpoint pen, that ball has to roll, but they give you that slippery receipt paper. And so the ball doesn't have enough friction to roll across the paper. I've thought about this in depth because it irritates the hell out of me.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And I blame the paper.
They should probably all have Microsoft Surfaces, and they could use my inking code.
I have seen some restaurants that have moved to a tablet system. I don't know their OS, but that have done that where they basically give you like something you just sign the screen, and that's like the only thing weird about using a pen on screen is that, and you mentioned the tactile feel, is that it's slicker. That glass is slick, and it feels like you're writing underwater or something like that. It just doesn't have the same feel as like if you have like a graphic like a pad that has more of a tactile feel to it, where the stylus kind of grabs and it feels more papery.
Yeah, one of the things they experimented with, I guess they didn't get very much usage, but at one point they were providing like 4 different pen tips with the Surface Pen. So you could use the one that had the scratchiness that you liked, but they stopped doing that. I guess maybe it wasn't a hit.
Oh, is that why it had 4? I just thought they were replacement tips. I think that was a documentation issue.
You just stuck with the default.
I'm like, why do I have 4 different tips? I don't know.
So is there with the inking or the pen input? There's got to be some interaction like with the screen itself. Or is all the pressure built into the pen? Like if with pressure sensitivity, like I want to draw a thick line or whatever, or is that even a thing? I guess.
That's a question. I'm not sure I know the answer. I want to say that the pressure sensors are all in the pen, and that the screen is just responsible for locating the pen.
Okay.
But I honestly don't know.
Yeah, it would be hard. Like, how does it do it with a touch?
I think there, because it feels spring-loaded when you're using it. Okay. So I do believe that the pressure sensitivity is in the pen as opposed to, like I have a Wacom tablet that I use for some other stuff, and that doesn't actually Yeah, it also has like a spring-loaded stylus, so a lot of that pressure comes from that. I don't know. There may be pressure sensors in the pad too, but having it in the pen allows you to move it across and go with
Right.
the flow without having like a giant sensor grid across your touch
Right.
screen. So I see that you did touchpad too, as well as like the inking with the touchpad, because the touchpad drives me nuts. And I know it's probably my own shortcomings. How do you figure out like what gestures should be, and how do you like recognizing those different things and processing it? What are the expectations there with those types of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the touchpad gestures has been a little bit of a wild west in terms of we kind of some people like one thing, some people like another thing. We try some things. The our PM team and our design team kind of came up with in the patch release. They kind of standardized on I think it's pretty standard. Two fingers is always going to be scrolling and zooming, similar to two finger touch, right? Once you get past two fingers, then that's when it gets kind of crazy. So what we kind of decided was three fingers is going to be like window manipulation. So three finger swiping left and right is going to switch between your active windows. Three fingers swiping up and down is going to minimize windows. And then we decided four fingers is for switching between virtual desktops. I don't think a lot of people even know about the virtual desktops feature. So probably even less people know about virtual desktops plus four finger gesture switching. But it's actually really, really powerful for doing development on a laptop, because you can have your remote desktop on one virtual desktop and use four fingers to switch back and forth between your local device and your remote device.
Oh,
But I would imagine the number of users who have discovered that combination of those three things to be very small.
I may have done it by accident once. you know, because that's my issue with the touchpad. It's always center underneath my hands, and I like accidentally swipe something, and my mouse is over in left field, and I'm like, "What the heck's going on?" Uh, but if I wanted to be a gestures master, I want to be the super user of the touchpad. Where could I go to find out what gestures are recognizable in what they do?
Yeah, in the Windows settings window, there's a whole section on touchpad and touchpad gestures, and you can even change them to be. You can customize them the way you want. It tells you what all the defaults are.
That's cool. I had to stop myself from digging into the settings as you were saying that.
They should have like a little game that you have to do all the different gestures for controlling your, like a little platformer or something. That would be a cool way to teach you the gestures.
Like teaching, yeah. We have a lot of debates about which things are worth teaching tips and which things aren't, because you could end up with a million teaching tips for every individual little feature. And so,
or an animated paperclip, that's
ding, ding, ding. For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, he's referring to Clippy, the old paperclip helper assistant that used to be in. This was just Office, right? That wasn't a Windows thing. That was Office. Yeah.
There's definitely a Clippy GIF that shows up in chat every couple days or so about something or other.
We use it too. We have a member of our team has just these phenomenal Excel skills, and we are always like, "Did Clippy do that for you?" Like, come on, there's no way you figured that out on your own. That's got to be Clippy,
So talking about doing things for you, what's your AI experience been as of late with being on the AI team? Like, how are you leveraging AI at an OS level? I mean, we've been talking about how to do it at an application level and using it, for development as a tool, but how is that different at an OS level?
Yeah, I think for me, especially coming from the touch and pen background, where those were each new, exciting ways to interact with your PC. And so for us, AI is just another even newer, more exciting way to interact with your PC. And so we're just really trying hard to, I don't know, circle and brainstorm and try to zero in on what is the most compelling user scenario for how to have AI help you interact with your PC. So that's where recall was one of the attempts of like maybe AI can help you remember or get back to or summarize the things that you've been doing on your PC. Copilot is another strategy of like maybe AI can sit with you while you're working and be there to answer immediate questions or help you drive your PC. And so I think there's definitely still a lot of questions and searching for what is the right product market fit. I hear a lot. And so we're just really trying to figure out how is the best way, because we all know it's powerful, but what is the right way to get that into users' hands in a way that they actually want?
Well, one I think that would be really good is, if you could use AI as part of the troubleshooter or something like that, since obviously there's already a lot of information out there. I would think that's a huge model to work off of, especially like when you go out to forums and all these other things, to be able to have AI assisted optimization or fine tuning of your system, and based on what you have, because I imagine that the number of computer configurations you guys have to support is infinite, basically, right? Like I build my
Yep.
own system, and I can't imagine. I'm still amazed that installs in operations work as well as they do for something that I Frankenstein together out of parts and pieces.
Yep.
So hats off for that. And but I imagine that's a troubleshooting nightmare.
Yeah, no, there's definitely lots of work streams thinking about that kind of stuff. Like Copilot kind of fits into that a little bit, because like maybe you could ask Copilot like, hey, I'm having a problem with this. Can you look at my screen and help me understand what's going on? And like there's so many cool things. It's just a matter of doing the work on the right one at the right time to get users interested.
That's a cool pro tip. Yeah, I didn't think of doing that. It's like, hey, Copilot, why?
Yeah, I don't know
Done
if
it
the
for
like
troubleshooting other things. I don't know why I didn't think of
yeah.
troubleshooting my system with that.
Yeah, I think the cool aspect of recall, as you describe it, is just having that consciousness of what am I looking at. And so that's got to be an interesting problem to solve. Is like taking pieces of the screen and digitizing that in a way and understanding what that was. So that when I ask, what was that video thing I was doing with Aaron and James back 2 weeks ago or something like that, that it understands that. How was that problem to solve? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so the big piece of that is these things called embeddings or semantic similarity. Just a quick overview of those. Like the gist is you take a picture or some text and you run a model on it, and it generates some coordinates. It's much more, but let's say it's an XY coordinate. And so like it's a picture of a fox, and we get an XY coordinate for the fox. And then there's a picture of, I don't know, what's something somewhat related to a fox, a squirrel. It's a picture of a squirrel. And so that has another XY coordinate, and it's kind of close to the fox. But then a picture of a race car has a different XY coordinate that's really far away from both the squirrel and the fox. And so as you like accumulate all these embeddings of these different things, you see which ones are close to each other. And so then that's how you can kind of do some of that really cool searching stuff. Was like one of the examples we always used was what was the presentation with the red barn in it. And so that text that says red barn, that has an XY coordinate. And then the picture that is a red barn also has an XY coordinate, and those are really close to each other. And so that XY coordinate is capturing it's called semantic, but it's capturing the meaning behind that text or behind that image. So even if you said like the text red barn and the text barn's not, what's there another word for a barn? I don't know.
Shed.
House, like red barn,
Shed,
red barn and red shed. Even though barn and shed are completely different like text terms, so they wouldn't match text wise, they are very, very close in this semantic space.
It sounds like we're getting really close to having our computers be able to click a checkbox that says "I am not a robot."
Yeah.
I don't know if they can figure out what a crosswalk is. We might be in trouble.
Yeah. Or which pictures have a bus in it? Yeah,
or a bike. Yeah,
or a bike. Yeah.
So so you're talking about embeddings. So embeddings, the way I think of embeddings is like it's taking something and turning it into a vector, right? And then those
exactly.
vectors would all live in the same vector space, and each component of the vector term in the vector would represent the same thing, concept, or whatever, right? Did you find that you had to, for different types of apps, like a visual picture, maybe is one embedding mechanism better for pictures versus text, or is there one Uber embedding algorithm?
Yeah, I think so. These are some of the things that I started to investigate, and then we also have this whole AI team designing these pipelines of like some stuff goes in here, some stuff goes in there. I think I'm probably getting into stuff that's proprietary at this point, but yeah, you can imagine there's all kinds of cool stuff. Like I don't know if you've seen part of Recall. It's kind of its own thing now, but if you hold down the Windows key, the whole screen pops up and it analyzes your screen and like highlights. It highlights the text with OCR. It finds all the image regions. And so that's one of the AI models that we're also using in the Recall pipeline.
That's cool.
And OCR, for those playing along at home, is what it was, optical character recognition, and something we use in content spaces a lot for taking a scanned document and being able to recognize what the words are on the page so that it can be digitized.
Yeah, so it's really powerful. Like I use it just like, let's say I'm someone's sharing their screen in a Teams meeting and I want to go to the same URL that they're in. I can just hold down the Windows key and then highlight the text from the screen sharing and go right there. Just
wow,
it's like simple but so powerful.
It almost puts almost like an overlay over your screen of
exactly,
semanticifying what all the things, and that's cool. I'll have to check that out. I didn't know that existed. That's really neat.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's only available on the new Copilot Plus PCs as well, but you should get one. They're pretty cool.
Christmas is coming up, so there we go.
Shameless plug from our guest. I love it.
I think even the 8 to 10 hour battery sells itself right there.
Yeah.
What other features does it have?
The wife is asking, "What do you want for Christmas?" I can't really think of anything. Now I can think of something.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, we better get a sponsorship check for this one.
I know. That's two. We've got Netflix and Microsoft now.
Yep.
I think they will see a spike in their sales from our viewers. They're going to see a recognizable spike from this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Our two listeners.
Is that my parents and your parents, Aaron? Is that?
No, my parents quit listening, so it might just be your parents now.
They're like, nah, come on.
They're like, this is way over my head. I can't. I love you, but no. All right. So at this point, let's go to ship it or skip it.
Ship or skip, everybody, we got to tell us if you ship or skip.
So ship it or skip it is where we talk back and forth about a few different topics and we make a decision on whether it is something we keep and ship it or it's not really needed or not a good idea. We'll skip that. So with our first one, James, what do we have on the docket for today's ship it or skip it?
A couple of warm-up questions. These should be pretty quick. So, and I didn't know how to phrase this. I think it's called just natural scrolling versus reverse scrolling when it comes to like touch interface. What do you prefer?
Yeah, so I was so against the reverse scrolling at first. It felt so unnatural. And then as soon as I used a touchscreen for like 5 minutes, then the like natural scrolling was the way to go. Like, so I guess I don't know which one you're saying. Like I like the one where it matches touch. So like where
it feels like as you grip the screen and flick in a direction, the screen goes that way. I like that one, whatever that's called.
Yeah, whatever that's called. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the natural scrolling, isn't it?
That's what I would have called it. Yeah.
I don't know. I know I used to have to like switch it every time I got something. It was the opposite of what I wanted it to seem like. I don't know, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm the same. I want my screen to follow the direction of my finger for that. However, I think on a mouse, I'm the same way. And that's one I always have to change on a Mac because Mac is reverse scrolling. So like when I roll my mouse wheel down, I want it to scroll down.
Oh, wow. You even changed mouse wheel. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, on a Mac, Windows does it the way I expect it to do it. So when I scroll down on my mouse wheel, my page goes up actually. So I guess that is reversed. I don't know. Is it considered the scroll box goes down, but the page goes up. So now I confused myself. I don't know. I just like what I like. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but
This was a bad topic.
I'm telling you, it's like one of those religious, like squiggly braces at the end versus the next line kind of thing. Because some people, when they see how I have mine set up, like, oh my gosh, how could you do that? It's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, it's just what I like. All right, go to the next one, I guess.
All right, dark mode everything.
I'm not really on board with that. I know I probably should be. It's supposed to be like save energy or something, but it makes me feel like I'm an evil villain or something.
I love that answer.
I don't want to be an evil villain.
Yeah.
It's bad enough I work for Microsoft. I don't want to be put in that box.
Wow, there goes our sponsorship. Thanks a lot, Aaron.
I had to balance it.
I thought I was with all that Microsoft money, I was going to get a new microphone, maybe some panels on for my wall, some acoustic panels. Man, forget it now.
What operating system are you on right now?
Let's go on to the next ship it or skip it.
So for me, I'm a skip it on dark mode everything. I'm looking at my screen right now. One's in dark mode, and my other two are in light mode. I like certain things in light mode and certain things in dark mode. It just depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes, because especially if you're doing something visual, you want the actual, and it may be something that you're presenting that is light mode. And having it in dark mode, you don't get the same kind of WYSIWYG feel in your editor.
Yeah, I'm skip it for everything. I'm the same as you. I think depending on what I'm doing, it's for most everything I'm dark mode. But like if I'm documents, I just feel it feels more natural to have that lighter background. It feels more like paper to me, I guess. I don't know. That just feels more natural. Okay, so 3D or holographic interfaces?
Yeah, this one's, I think, kind of tough. I think some of the 3D stuff would be cool if you could have like a large virtual monitor, or like then you could, I don't know, you could sit in your comfy chair and you could have your 6 monitors right there with you. But for actually being productive, I don't think there's a ton else there.
So you skip it.
So I think I'm a skip it. Yeah.
I think for me, I've always been fascinated by this. I have a hard time doing textual work, as like, if I'm doing a bunch of like text documenting or coding, it's not a great environment for that. However, in other things that I'm doing, it would be awesome to have, those kind of interfaces. But I wouldn't want to have to manipulate with my hands in space. I've done some of that before with like the early field recognition stuff, and having your hands in a position where they can be read for a long period of time is very stressful on the shoulders and arms. And so, being able to have like some type of joystick controls for motion and that kind of thing, where I can still end up doing typing, and that's really the hard thing, is the control shifting between the two. So I guess I'm an in between. I'm like, yes, for certain things, ship it for certain things, skip it for other things. Like if I was doing 3D modeling in a space, 3D holographic interfaces would be awesome, because I could then, I could literally move around my model and then, touch and pull and sculpt like, the way that I would want things to move. That would be really cool. But I'm coding, a backend server function. No, I don't need that to be.
So you're mixed. Okay, I am ship it because like I think when I think of like holographic interface, I think of like Jarvis from Iron Man, right? So he's got all this stuff floating up in the air and he's interacting with it and everything. And of course, you guys can't see what I'm doing, but I'm mimicking that. But I like, just for the fact that like with that type of interface, Iron Man was able, or Tony Stark was able to like solve time travel after he was like, washing the dishes, and then he's like, hey, why don't I go spend 20 minutes with Jarvis and figure out time travel? I want to figure out time travel. I got some stuff I want to do. So that's why I would say ship it. If I can solve time travel with holographic interfaces in 20 minutes, absolutely.
I'm going to have to start calling you Hollywood.
I think that's a good point. That's probably why we haven't figured out time travel yet.
It is. It's got to be the only. It's got to be the key.
Yeah. God, I think I lost IQ points with that answer.
You're welcome. May God have mercy on your soul. We are all now dumber.
So there you go. AI as an input mechanism, so like conversational AI.
Yeah, I'm definitely ship that. Not just with your computer. Like, I think it's going to be really cool to talk to your computer and have it really know what you're saying and in your own language. But all these other things in our life that, like, I feel like they were blocked by not having a good input mechanism, like a smart fridge. Like, this is my secret startup idea for all your listeners. Like like put a couple cameras in a fridge, connect it to ChatGPT, and you can tell it when you're putting stuff in, and it knows what it is, and then it keeps track of it for you, and it tells you what to eat. And I don't know, like this is not our biggest fight, but my wife always complains that I'm not eating the oldest leftover. Like, well, if I could ask ChatGPT, what am I supposed to eat today? And the fridge just tells me, like, that would solve a lot of problems.
Or what's in the back of the fridge? Like, have those rear cameras. So it's like, what's back there? I can't see back there. What
exactly?
What's lingering back there? Or, some kind of mold alert. Let it have the recognition to say, hey, this one's going bad. This is going to smell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Is that spaghetti sauce that I forgot about back there moldy yet? Yeah.
James, how about you?
I like it. I think of Jarvis. Just being able to talk to the computer and have it do things. I absolutely like that. Now, I don't. As a general computing, that's the thing, I guess, maybe that in the spirit of this question could have been. I think, for assistance and those sort of things, yes, it's cool. But I don't know about at an operating system level, my day-to-day computing, could I just sit here and talk to my computer and have it that's my only mechanism for input? Probably not, but for assistance and those sort of things, for sure.
Well, I am a ship it. I don't ever use a single input to my system. My desktop is littered with different input devices, and having one of those being conversational would be amazing. I have played with voice recognition for my system since probably the late 90s to early 2000s. Like when PC Talk, I think that's what it was called, first came out, or PC Voice or something like that. I'm like, this is awesome. And you talk into a headset, try and navigate your OS and stuff like that. But it was never very good. So if we could have AI recognize conversational terms and do what we want and provide suggestions and be able to modify prompts and things like that, that would be just phenomenal. So yes, please ship it. Please ship it. I want it.
All right. Very cool. How about brain computer interfaces? Like, I'm thinking of like Neuralink or something like that. What do you think about those?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely ship those. When I was, I don't know, maybe in high school or something, I wrote like a list of things that I wanted to work on, and that's the only one I haven't accomplished yet. So I can imagine going to work on that at some point. But yeah, I think it's going to be so cool to be able to think and interact with your machine, and it just unlocks so many things. The safety aspect is what scares me, and like, I'm glad people are working on it and that it's not ready yet. But yeah, there's a definite future there.
Yeah, I'm a hard pass on this one. I don't trust my brain enough to be able to run a computer, so I don't want it direct linked. I think that would cause all kind of havocs, especially if you start getting into that space where I'm thinking about 10 different things. I don't want 10 different windows popping up on my screen. That's just going to make multitasking that much harder. So yeah, I'm a hard pass on that one.
I'm with you on that. I don't think I want my computer to be like basically rendering what I'm thinking for sure. I think nobody wants that. However, for brain computer interfaces, I think it's interesting I would think like prosthetics. I think that's kind of one of the coolest uses of that, where you're able to, like, I can think, hey, I'd like for my hand to clench into a fist, and it actually does it. But because my brain did it, it's a prosthetic. I think that's a really cool use case for something like Neuralink or any of the other. Are there any other companies really doing that? There's no one I've ever heard of is Neuralink right now.
I think there's a few others that are way less in your face about it.
I gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, I think like you mentioned, my wife, I don't know if anyone have ever heard this. My wife says she always sends so many mental texts, like in her head. She thinks about a text she wants to send to someone, but then never has a chance to do it. So like even just that ability to be able to think, hey, text this person this and have it send, that would be so cool.
Texting exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Maybe if you had like an activation trigger, it's like, hey brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey brain, send,
Don't text exactly what I'm thinking immediately. That's probably not a good idea. But I like one thing that's cool. I use like GTD, getting things done, and the whole idea of like capturing something and getting it out of your brain quickly. If you could use like a neural link to like jot something down very quickly and get it out, so you don't have to think anymore. Ooh, now we're talking. Man.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, the Neuralink thing it's interesting you mentioned that. I initially wanted to go into robotics to do exactly that. Because to me, I always thought of the human body as like a giant electrical system, and it may be one of my biology teacher's faults. I thought, well, all you need to do is rewire it. And also, Luke Skywalker's hand was really cool, so I wanted to do that. I'm like, why isn't that possible? It looks like you've got your Tony Stark, I got my Luke Skywalker. So
that's fair. That's fair.
All right, that's all the time we've got for Ship It or Skip It today. So we move into the most important part of the podcast. You know it, you love it, the lightning round. So the lightning round works like this. James and I are going to quick fire questions at you left and right, and you can't dodge these. They're going to hit you square in the face, and you've got to answer each one. We don't need pontification or long explanation on your answers, just whatever you feel is the right answer. You may or may not be judged on your answers, just to give you fair warning. And with that, are you, Nat, ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it.
Awesome. James, why don't you start us off, because I don't have my question bank open.
This one's a doozy. I've never used this one before. This is a good one. Why can't we tickle ourselves?
Our brains just don't let it happen.
Fair enough.
It knows. It's not a surprise.
There you go.
So I noticed from your intro you have a dog. Big dogs or small dogs?
Big dogs.
Nice.
What's the fastest speed you've ever driven in a car? Allegedly, of course.
Allegedly, 95.
Respectable.
If everyone in the world had to get married when they reach a certain age, what age would that be?
Ooh, let's say 40.
What? It's so funny you answered that, because I was just watching a TV show last night. It was an old episode of Reba, and she asked her daughter, it's like, when is it appropriate for a girl to be active? And she said 40. She's like, did I ever tell you my favorite? It just reminded me of that.
Reba. Okay, we're going to have to talk about that later. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how hot do you like your showers?
Ooh, it really depends on how I'm feeling that day.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer, like sometimes even a 1. In the winter, 10.
Okay, fair. Fair.
So there's an inverse relationship there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Name a word that starts with the letter Q.
Quiet.
Name a word that starts with the letter Q.
Well done. Okay. Okay. Do you know the definition of triskaidekaphobia?
Triskaidekaphobia. I don't know. Something about 10-sided by bugs, maybe 10-legged bugs. I don't know. That's my guess.
I have no idea what it is. So
Is that the fear of the number 13? Or is that triskaidekaphobia?
I don't know. I just saw the question. I'll look it up later, I guess.
Now that's going to bug me. You should have had the answer ready for that one.
No.
Listeners will have to come back next week to hear
That's
the
right.
answer.
So we're gonna test how many episodes you've listened to. What sound does a seal make? Sorry, that is the incorrect answer. It's art, as we all know.
Art. If there's a spider in your house, do you kill it or set it free?
Neither. I just let it be.
Okay, we would have also accepted that answer.
Name something you could eat for a week straight.
Eggs.
So many things you could do with eggs. I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our producer has shared with us that triskaidekaphobia is an intense irrational fear of the number 13.
Nice.
Who's the big brain in the room?
That's right. Your Latin classes in high school paid off, I guess. Finally.
It was more. That part of my psychology class I really liked was manias and phobias.
Okay.
So, because there's some weird ones.
I want to know how many people suffer from that. I guess 13 is kind of a.
It's more of a superstition, but apparently there's a real like physical fear of it. Like they won't.
Well, they don't put 13.
They won't go
floors
through
on buildings.
Yeah, they don't put a floor. Well, they do now, but they used to not do it. But I guess if you have like this phobia, you won't walk through a door that has a number 13 in its number. So, or go to a house that has an address that has a 13 in it.
Wow.
It could be really strange. But I mean, that's why it's a phobia. It's an irrational fear, right? So is the technical definition. Anyways, I digress.
I think that's it.
I think that's it. I think that's our lightning round. And you
only allowed
survived.
10. Yeah, the sponsors will only pay for 10 questions.
Our plethora of sponsors. So that concludes this episode of the / where we lean into the future of IT. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast for future episodes. I'd like to thank our guest, Nat Pollock, for talking with us about development at Microsoft and for being a gracious guest and supplying us with lots of funding for our podcast. I'm just kidding. There was no funding. I'd also like to thank my beautiful co-host, James, and all of our production staff that make this podcast possible. I'm Aaron Chesney. Thank you, and stay curious.